Absolute pleasure and privilege to be with you all. As our wonderful professor said, we are going to talk about the donut, but I'm going to do my own show of hands as well. Put your hand up if you know about the donut. All right, this is a room of experts. You're going to know a little bit more about the donut, but first we're going to talk about finance. As we're all here talking about the financing the transition, we're all aware that finance makes the economy work. Finance oils the wheels of the economy. Finance decides which economic activity happens and which doesn't. It can be the driving engine behind the kind of business model transitions that we need. So to assess how finance is doing, I propose a donut. This donut of the ecological boundary and the social foundation helps us set the limits, the boundaries for the economy that we must create. We must live in balance between the ecological boundary, which are the planetary boundaries like climate change, ocean acidification, biodiversity loss. We must not be an overshoot. And it also sets the social boundary. We must make sure everybody on Earth has access to life's essentials, that humanity thrives while broader ecological life thrives as well. So if this is the goal, we can ask ourselves, how is finance doing? Is finance channeling itself to the economic activities that are helping humanity into the donut? And the lesson is that it is not. The economy is living far beyond the carrying capacity of this planet, and it is failing to meet the needs of hundreds of millions of people on this planet as well. But of course, from your show of hands earlier, you're all aware that we are not on path. We are not progressing to the economy we need that will be in the safe and just space for humanity. We need to change something. So we can also have a look at national level. We're sitting in France. I'm originally from Turkey, and I grew up in Australia, so I've got a connection to some of these countries, and a story emerges. A story that tells us that the high-income countries have built economies and economic systems where they depend on overusing their fair share of this planet's boundaries, and we have built economies that are falling short for life's essentials for hundreds of millions. Countries in the global south like Burundi, Malawi, others are actually not using their fair share of the planet's resources, while we are massively overusing the shares in the global north. This tells us a picture of we are all developing countries now. This is telling us that we all need to transform. The economic model has got a long way to go. What is causing this? As highlighted earlier, the degenerative model of take, make, use, lose, where we take from Earth its materials, we make things, we use things, we lose things, and we repeat this over and over again. Fortunately, there is hope because new ideas are emerging. Ideas like biomimicry and the circular economy that are telling us that it is possible to build economic activity that is working with and within the cycles of the living world. Now, these ideas are beginning to spread. We're starting to see inspiration among businesses that are focusing on being regenerative as a priority. And this is happening across different industries, from businesses like Fairphone that have built a modular technology product that can be repaired and upgraded, to organizations and businesses like Selco in India that have said, we're going to build rural renewable energy systems, not just sell the product, and we're going to train technicians locally to support the uptake and looking after those energy systems. We're also seeing circular fashion businesses like Houdini. We're seeing examples of the circular economy and even the provision of toilets like Sanergy toilets in Kenya, where the waste is treated, sanitized, and put into organic fertilizer for agriculture. So all of this is absolutely possible. However, the regenerative, the ecologically regenerative angle is only one part of the picture. Because there is a missing part here. I've been walking around ChangeNOW. I've been talking to many of you. There's a lot of excitement on climate tech. There's a lot of excitement on technical and technological solutions, particularly on climate, and that is critical. But we are missing the social side. We are missing financing the very difficult transition to a distributive economy where we are sharing value and opportunity much more equitably with all who are co-creating it. And those are very carefully chosen words because we are co-creating that value. And we need to be deliberately setting up systems of business and finance that are sharing that value and that opportunity more equitably. This side is particularly missing in the conversation of finance. Finance is really struggling to think, how do we distribute the upward opportunity more equitably? It is about capturing. It is about accumulating wealth. And this goes against the very grain of equality and fairness and building a distributive model. But we do have some inspirations. We have examples, again, from across the world of businesses who have been able to build themselves to be distributive by design. Whether it's in relation to their workers and artisans, like the fair trade enterprise, Creative Handicrafts in India, or Biocoup, which is built a model that is bringing in farmers and consumers and shop owners into its decision-making, its governance, and its ownership. Or examples like Fairbnb that have said we're going to have far more equitable relationships, long-term commitments to our local communities. Or Lush, which has said, look, we're going to have a relationship with government that is about long-term commitment, and a relationship where we are not paying the minimum tax, we're paying a fair share of tax. These are the kind of deliberate models that are critical. But behind all these, and behind the regenerative examples I gave earlier, is finance that has enabled them, finance that has been reshaped, repurposed, and been deliberate in supporting them. If we think back to Fairphone that I talked about earlier, well, crowdfunding provided the patient capital that allowed it to make that business model work. If we think back to Selco, they had to redesign their ownership structure, bring in new investors that were aligned to the business model they wanted to and needed to pursue. If we think about all of these, behind them, there is innovation in finance that is absolutely critical. So, what is stopping all of this from becoming a much more critical part of our economy? It is the fact that life is in service of finance. We have created an economy that accepts that as the norm, as the rule, as the parameters. Life is in service of finance. And we can change this. But first, we need to grasp the system we have created, the parameters that we have created that are limiting what is possible. Circularity is in decline. If many of you have read the Circular Gap report that came out from the Circular Economy, you'll note that circularity is declining. Despite all of the fanfare, despite all of the investment in the circular innovation, despite all of the amazing work of entrepreneurs, this is marginal and becoming more marginalized. At the same time, the last 5 years, we have used about as much material as we did the entire 20th century. Now sit with this for a second. How does it feel to know that the last 5 years, the material usage has been about the same as a whole century before us? That is the direction of travel. That is the kind of growth-driven model behind our current impacts. At the same time, we're making big climate targets and we're failing to act. Just recently, the Science-Based Target Initiative was reduced, delegated, and relegated a whole bunch of corporates, including Microsoft, Unilever, and others, that were failing to take the actions needed. Across the board, we're seeing companies held back from taking the actions that are needed. Great targets, great measurements, failing to act. Poverty is rising again. The World Bank is telling us this. Inequality is rising again. Across the world, researchers are telling us this. While I know very well, I've spent the last 20 years of my career working in supply chains with workers, farmers, artisans. They are trapped in relationships of poverty because the trading terms, the payment terms, and the prices that are enforced on them make it impossible for them to escape poverty. We talk about supply chain innovation, but we're not restructuring supply chain trading relationships and redistributing the value and the opportunity. Meanwhile, stock markets are at record highs, and private equity is doing better than it ever has. Something's out of balance here. Finance does well when we are on the wrong direction of travel. And maybe most critically, the transition. This is what we're here to talk about. Well, business model transitions are delayed. They're held back, and they're not allowed to proceed within and across companies. So, let's have a look at a few of them. In agriculture, we're not moving to agroecology and regenerative agriculture because finance, by and large, is still channeling towards monocrop, intensive, high-input agriculture. The energy transition is too slow, and we're not getting the investment through into the kind of renewable and affordable energy solutions we need. The fashion industry is stuck in fast fashion. It is more profitable, it delivers higher returns to keep selling something that consumers wear once or twice and get thrown out. And the building and construction industry as well. That needs to transform. These are just 4 that I've picked. There are many others. This transformation that we need is being held back, and finance is at the heart of this. So, what is holding this back? What is holding back the financing of that regenerative and distributive, the yellow slides I'm showing there? Well, it's business as usual. And this is how I would like to define business as usual. It is the pursuit of maximum profits, maximum margins, and maximum dividends. Now, that is keeping us trapped in a degenerative and divisive model of business. And if we look at the solutions that are emerging, that are regenerative and distributive, it is in that slither of overlap, that little bit where across here and beyond, we're all piling in. We're all looking for these same things. We're all piling in to try to crowd each other out within a space that isn't enough. That space is limited. The party is full, and we're trying to line up to get in. So, what do? Let's redesign to make a bigger space, make more things possible. Let's design around being regenerative and distributive, so that finance can come in, and finance knows that its purpose is to fulfill that space. The more we are stuck in the previous space, the more we are going to delay and limit the transition. So, let's pile in here. But first, we need to redesign. And let's begin with a quick redesign of business. What do we mean by redesigning business? Well, we use the work of Marjorie Kelly of looking at purpose, networks, governance, ownership, and finance. And essentially, it's about moving from the 20th century question that is limited what's possible, that says how much value can we extract through this enterprise? And we need to move to the 21st century question that says how many benefits can we generate through this enterprise? Hopefully that makes sense, but I'm going to give you examples in case it doesn't. Let's think about purpose. How do we design for purpose, and what is the role of finance? Well, if we look at Tony's Chocolonely, amazing purpose, 100% slave-free, the norm in chocolate. Notice it's not about them, it's about the industry. That's a purpose statement that some of the better companies are doing. It's about transforming the broader world and the industry. But they don't stop there. They've designed a mission lock. So they have guardian shareholders that have got special rights to make sure the purpose doesn't get pulled away from the company. That means that it is redefining its relationship with finance. If you're an investor in Tony's, there are limits to what you can achieve. You cannot undermine its purpose, and that's locked in. A new relationship, a new design, and the purpose being locked in. Networks, and this is about the relationships and redesigning relationships with workers, farmers, with communities, with consumers, with the broader public, with the state, with the industry at large. The example that comes to mind here, El Puente from Germany, a business that has redesigned long-term partnerships, long-term collaboration with its suppliers, and it's locked that in by giving a board seat and co-ownership to its supply chain. Its long-term suppliers elect a board member to sit in the board of El Puente. Again, a new relationship with finance and ownership. It's bringing in the stakeholders. How about if we redesign governance? What would we do? Well, Faith in Nature shows us a really interesting example that says, hey, what if we designed the board to give nature a voice and a vote? And again, notice, it's not about them. We're the first company in the world to give nature a voice and a vote, but we don't want to be the last. It's about transforming the entire industry. They don't want the change to stop with them. What's critical is that they're working with Lawyers for Nature to give nature a voice and a vote. Ownership. Many of you would have known about what Patagonia did now nearly 2 years ago. And again, they've redesigned ownership to make sure that there are 2 share classes. One class of shares that has the voting rights, but not the dividend rights, and a different class that has the dividend rights, but not the voting rights. They separated power and money, inspired by the steward ownership movement, of which there are dozens and dozens of companies around Europe and beyond that are redesigning their ownership to lock in that purpose. And lastly, finance. How about we redesign finance, as Grameen Bank and Doughnut did in Bangladesh through a joint venture, through a new company, where the profits of the company is reinvested to make more nutritious and more affordable food. Now, these are all examples of redesign that is made possible because finance and investment has been able to flex. So, if you're interested, we have actually created a tool that is in the Creative Commons that companies can take a look at. And if you're looking for expert facilitators, we have a community of organizations in action listed on our website who are ready to support businesses to redesign themselves. Now, this journey is particularly for organizations and consultants that are truly values-driven. Organizations where the structure of the company itself, the consultancy itself, is making sure they are focused on being regenerative and distributive. It's not for all, but it is for those that are truly committed. But hey, let's not stop there, because behind all of these stories is a redesign of finance itself. And here, what we're beginning to see is new energy, new life, new innovation in the way we design finance. And let's begin with some of the kinds of instruments that are emerging. I've recently read the book of Orni Patton-Power on adventure finance that highlights some of these examples, but so many others are also giving us insights. Transform Finance has been working with investors to see how investment models can be adapted to allow for an ownership transformation in companies. Zebras Unite have a concept called exit to community, a new model of designing finance and investment to enable this to happen. Now, all of these ideas, whether it's systemic investing or revenue-based finance, all of these can be designed in extractive ways or regenerative and distributive ways. They are not silver bullets. But what they do is invite you in to a process of redesigning finance with a deliberate goal in mind. So if you're not here, then where will you be? You'll be stuck in venture capital. You'll be stuck in a model where you are looking for highest growth possible, and that is limiting us. So this is a way for us to open our minds into broader ways of financing a more diverse set of enterprises that will drive different solutions. Because for most companies, they are not going to meet the requirements of venture capital. They're not going to grow 10x. They're not going to be unicorns. They're going to be businesses that can be locked into a mission and a purpose, and they need a different kind of finance. So, if we're going to move from life in service of finance, we must first be honest about where we are and how we are limited. And it is possible then to redesign ourselves so finance is in service of life. And that is the exciting thing. That is the new terrain. That is where the energy must now go. What will that look like? A few ideas and a few questions. It means we must redesign business. And we have a tool, we have approaches, we have examples. But it will require us to redesign financial and risk expectations. We cannot demand the 20th century parameters of finance on 21st century businesses. We must redesign the purpose of finance. What are you here for? Are you here to grow yourself? Are you here to accumulate? Are you here to serve finance, or are you here to serve life? We must redesign financial instruments actively, deliberately, to unlock the transitions, unlock the actions, unlock the very strategies that we need. And lastly, and this is going to be the scary one, but it's going to be possible. It's going to be about redesigning the financial system itself. So my question to the panel and my challenge to all of you is, are you ready for this? Are you ready to redesign finance, or are we going to be kept back by 20th century models? Are we ready to look deep inside ourselves and think, hey, a new economy is possible, and it will mean we wiggle out of the constraints of 20th century finance? I hope you are, we are, and we're seeing the energy emerge. Thank you very much.